Well, it is that time again. It is the time that our newer players, especially, and those who have recreated, always look forward to at the end of every season. It is the Season 14 SSL Prospect Draft. Hello, everyone. I am Metafiction. I am joined today by Zoom,
Hello, everyone.
and I am joined by our esteemed Commissioner Candidates.
Hello.
So, as always, we will be going through the list of the players that have been created over the course of this past season and assigning them from their academy teams to their SSL organizations. And certainly this class is a lot deeper than classes we've had in recent seasons. Certainly no lack of talent here. Some very interesting players, potential matches between player and organization here. It's going to be very interesting to see how this breaks down.
Yeah, I mean, coming from the previous draft class myself, there's a sizable difference between the two, so it's going to be interesting to see just how far this draft goes, and especially in future seasons, how many stay active as well.
No
I think
kidding.
this is the first time we've had more than 3 rounds in, I believe, 5 or 6 seasons.
It's a very deep class to be sure, and we might look back in future seasons and look at this draft as being one of the defining draft classes in the SSL, just from how deep it is, how many quality players are in it. It's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out, certainly.
Definitely, and it'll last a little bit before we get started. I mean, it's not because you got drafted later than other people that you're not as good as them. This is just getting to the starting line. Afterwards, once you start moving to the minors and then the majors, for some players, that's where you get to shine and just leave a legacy. So, this is the beginning. This is just where you're gonna get your opportunities.
Absolutely. I mean, it's for the American football fans out there, if there are any watching this. Remember, Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round, and well, we know how well he turned out. So, it, just because you have a low draft position, that doesn't mean you can't contribute. If anything, it might mean that the organization that drafted you got a steal.
Are we
And
ready for the first pick?
let's
I am
go.
ready as I'll ever be.
So first up, we have the uh, 8th place team in the Majors League last season, Club Atlético Buenos Aires, and they have selected Leo Fiacra.
Well, I do want to preface this starting out by saying that there has been an issue with the scraper, so that the traits that have been there you see there aren't necessarily what the actual traits that the player has. So I can tell you right now that the actual traits Leo Friacra has are tries killer balls often and dictates tempo. And honestly, for what this player seems to be, the creative engine of the center midfield, those are two very good traits to have. And you see there absolutely from 4 assists from 4.05 expected assists. Uh, this this player is going to be and should be, in my opinion, a very effective creator for Buenos Aires and Athenai.
Yeah, and as a user, Fiacre has been extremely active within the Academy League. He was one of the people who actually asked to participate in setting tactics for their team. So, which we have not seen that on this front from other users, really. So yeah, I think he's someone that will potentially even fit in within the war room for Kaba and Athenite.
Certainly a very strong selection here to shore up that Athenai midfield and that locker room, which absolutely. I mean, you see, Athenai have had a rough couple of seasons. This might be a sign that their fortunes might be turning, and certainly a few seasons down the road can certainly help out Buenos Aires very much as well. One thing that stands out for me, in addition to the traits, is that 15 passing rating. So right from the off, this player is going to be able to make those passes that can really, hopefully, unlock defenses and really set up some incredible chances.
Absolutely. And it's like, where does he fit? I'm not sure about the depth of Kaba, but he might be able to make the majors jump right off the bat, depending on their depth. Otherwise, a season or two in Athenai was not going to hurt him into developing into that player that the organization wants him to be.
Indeed.
Next up,
So as
we
we
have.
said, sorry,
Sorry, did you have some final comments
not
on
really.
Fiacra?
I was just going to do a sum up thing, but it's not really necessary.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So next up, as at the second overall pick, we have Hollywood FC. I believe this was a trade. No, it was not. The fourth overall pick was a trade. So the second overall pick, Hollywood FC selects Nikola Lovric.
So Nikola Lovric, the apologies, the central defender uh, from Stockholm. The traits that are on screen again, not quite correct. Although I would love to see a center back that has tries tricks. That would be amazing to see one day. But the actual traits are marks opponent tightly and stays back at all times. So this is a very much a defensively focused, more of a stopper, I would say, in central defense is Nikola Lovry and or Lovrich, apologies. So certainly certainly Hollywood and Capstad hoping that this guy can be a rock in their center defense for several seasons to come.
Yeah, especially with a league that has, a draft class that has an incredibly high focus on midfield and up front. Uh, when you're a high TPE central defenseman, you make yourself extremely attractive to teams that need to rebuild from the blue line, or sorry, the backside. And well, watch way too much hockey these days. But yes, from the back line forward, defense wins
Absolutely.
championships, and you start with a solid central defenseman there to then eventually build up front. And yeah, I think that's a very good value pick for Hollywood Capstad, and we'll see how much it continues to contribute over the seasons.
And Lovrich is one of those that only you see there are only 8 appearances in the academy, I believe, created mid-season, but certainly nothing wrong with that. I mean, granted, I'm biased. I created mid-season, so there's a little bit of a little bit of predispensation there. But even in limited action, it's fairly clear that Lovrich should be. It's going to be very interesting to see how Lovrich develops here.
For sure. And AW13 is a veteran from all the sim leagues, so the user is well known, and I guess very much appreciated by the Hollywood War Room. So hopefully it's a good match, and we'll see how things go in the future.
Best of luck.
Next up, we have Tokyo SC with the third overall pick. And they have selected Hannah Van Garrison.
I
So Hannah
believe.
Van
I'll
Gerritsen.
go ahead.
Sorry, sorry. I should have. I probably should have
Go
let
for
you
it.
take the lead on this one. But yes, Hannah Van Gerritsen, the right wing back, does actually have traits, despite what that screen says. Those traits being curls ball, which is a very interesting choice, and runs with ball often. So certainly going to try and make a difference up that right side, seemingly more as a more attacking wing back as opposed to a defensive one.
Yeah, and Hannah Van Gerritsen had a very solid year for was it Stockholm, because I mean the average rating of a 7.17 is pretty good, especially when you're on the back lines. As a right wing back, you know you don't have as many offensive opportunities necessarily, but you're carrying the ball up front. So overall, 717 is a very good rating. And I do want to point out one thing, which I believe is that Evan Gerritsen had the biggest distance run by any player in the Academy League with a staggering 213.8 kilometers run. Um, just to give you an idea of this player being able to endure a lot.
That is pretty fascinating, and it tracks with those strengths that we see there. 15 acceleration, 14 pace, of course, speed, so important in the SSL, and this looks like a player that can run fast and run for long periods of time. So
I want to
Yeah.
note the she's got a goal. I can't remember from what type of situation that goal came from, but as a right wing back, having expected goals of 1.58, that's quite good.
that is quite impressive, certainly. Anytime you see a fullback scoring a goal, it is honestly pretty incredible. I still have memories of at least one like Tottenham goal where Jan Vertonghen was playing at fullback for I believe injury reasons and just scored an absolute beauty of a goal. So a fullback goal, not the most common thing, but certainly a sight when it does happen.
Yeah, and I mean, last bit is Rena also one of those Sim League veterans that has been around for a long time. So, you know, general, the consensus is that the Sim League veterans do go a bit earlier than others. But at the same time, you know, we saw that our one overall was someone new. So just to give people a bit of a visibility that you have a bit of both up front. It's just a matter of how active you are and just how long it's been since you've been very active. But yeah, I've got nothing else to say. Another backline pick early on. I believe that amount that those teams rebuilding really are focusing on rarer positions first, and I'm sure that we'll hit a run of offensive players shortly.
Certainly should be interesting to see how these young defenders develop.
Next up, we have Hollywood back on the board again. This pick was originally owned by AC Romana, but has been or had been traded to Hollywood earlier in the season. We will see some draft day, draft week trades that we will talk a bit about here today as well. But this was a trade done prior to the draft week. So Hollywood with pick number 4, their second pick in the draft, and they select Pete Martell.
Yeah, Pete Martell is, I believe, the TPE leader for the class. As you can see, at the time we put the sites together, he was at 552 TPE. Um, Overall, like, you know, he's been playing above expectations. If you look at his goals, 7 with a 663 expected and 6 assists with 376 expected. So really, really solid player. Is among the top 10 in distance run, and I believe is in the top 10 for average rating. So this player has really done it all for Atletico Medellin this year. And yeah, I think he's a great choice. I believe the first attacking midfielder that we've had uh, drafted this draft.
Indeed, and once again, one of those very more aggressive players. I will say one of the traits is correct. That Pete Martell does have the trait shoots with power, which is a very makes it is a very fun choice in center attacking mid, I must say. And his second trait is dictates tempo. So we should be seeing Pete Martell contributing heavily up front for either Capsat or Hollywood, whether facilitating the strikers or just going for shots themselves. And with the acceleration and pace of 15 and a dribbling of 14, should be able to get into those positions quickly to contribute very effectively. And you see there in the stats to the left, 7 goals, 6 assists. So really, Pete Martell can kind of do it all from up front, whether that be scoring for himself or playing in teammates.
Absolutely, and might be one of those attacking midfielders that will shoot from just outside the box, but essentially also play more of a distributor role to the strikers up front. So he might just be, the equivalent of just a libero or, well, maybe not in this game, but more in like professional terms. I'm not sure about all the traits and position roles. But, could fit into a shadow striker role as well down the line.
Certainly an intriguing pickup by Hollywood Capstad, and certainly will be very exciting to watch this player develop. And as you said, the TPE leader of the class currently, albeit only by 1 or 2 TPE. It's not a huge gap. Nevertheless, the TPE leader, and again, even with that head start, it should be very should Martell should contribute very early on to whichever team he ends up playing with.
So just a quick recap as we're 4 picks in. First overall, Leo Fiacra. Second overall, Nikola Lovric. Third overall, Hannah Van Gerritsen. And now fourth overall, Pete Martell. What do you make of the draft so far?
Well, some very strong players coming off the board. Some very interesting player organization fits, as I mentioned. Uh, certainly, certainly, I'd love to see all of these players play. I mean, we'll never, as with all of the players that are going to be taken today, we won't really know for sure how they'll pan out until we see them on the field. But certainly, I like them. I like the pick by Buenos Aires to take Leo Fiacre first overall. That is a very, I would say, slightly underrated pick by them. I think that's going to be a very strong pick for them, both this coming season and in the future. So look out for Leo Fiacre.
Yeah, I also remember that Cabad did just get a new old GM, to say the least. So, um, yeah, I think having the first overall for them was also a bit of a statement pick to get, hey, maybe the future of management or the war room, etc. So I believe, you know, you're sometimes you're picking the player, sometimes you're picking the user, and I believe this is a good case of picking the player and the user.
Absolutely, it could be the dawn of a new era in Buenos Aires.
We are ready with pick number 5, and that is the German team, Schwarzwälder Fußballverein, I think, uh, with 5 overall or 5th overall. And they have selected Lara Schmidt.
Yeah, Clara Schmidt, the second highest distance run in the Academy League, played for Sydney. Forget if it's Sydney FC or Sydney City. But I consider anyone who's had an average rating of 7 and above to have had a good season. As you can see, goals and assists are above expected. Uh, just as a reminder, the expected is the number in the brackets, and then the actual goals they've had is the one that's not in the brackets. But usually, if your expected is below the actual thing, that means it's good. But they're a left attacking midfielder, so we're now moving into the more offensive portion of the draft, as you can see. Um, yeah, focus on acceleration, pace, and dribbling.
And I will say we see the strengths there. That those are the top three attributes by the number assigned to them, and seeing them all at 12 might be concerning on first glance, but that just tells me that this is a more well-rounded player, rather than rather than using their starting TPE and using them to max out a set number of attributes. They've spread it a little more evenly, built a little more wider base to start from, which is honestly, if you ask me, that's a plus for versatility. This player can grow into whatever they need to be. And you see there, obviously, we've marked out acceleration, pace, and dribbling, but we also have 12 decisions, 12 flair, 12 vision, several of these stats at 12, as I mentioned. So looking at their player page, as far as the traits go, we have cuts inside from both wings and tries tricks. So this should be a player that can seemingly do the very unexpected. So certainly a level of flair that is being expected from this player and seems well equipped to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing else to say. Does do you have anything to say, Candice?
I mean, the reference there you made earlier, or you talked about the expected goals and the actual goals. Like you mentioned, it's good if you have a player that scores more than they are expected to do. However, you could also interpret that as the player being very lucky. So they've been taking chances that are less likely to actually succeed in creating a goal or creating an assist for the expected assist, but the end result has been that they scored or they've made the pass that scored afterwards. So maybe we'll see a Schmidt that is a bit, on average, a bit unluckier next season in the minors, but is really rolling in some luck. It seems with Sydney that maybe Sydney didn't, as a team as a whole, didn't really perform as they hoped in the academy. So having these lucky players is a bright spot on that otherwise
Yeah,
unlucky team.
but talking of minor leagues as well, you know, they're going to be joining the Montreal organization first and foremost, as I'm guessing, and Montreal had a bit of a difficult season last season, so I believe that you know, helping that team up front is a big priority as well.
Certainly, they had a rough season, but they also have some very strong players, so they could be well positioned for a rebound next season. At least that's the hope. And I do want to point out, certainly having a higher goal contribution than XG or higher assist than XA, certainly that could be a sign of luck. But I do want to point out there is also a chance that it could symbolize that they're just very good at scoring from chances that otherwise very might not, like most players wouldn't score, finding that one precise angle that other players might not be able to. So I that's my as a fan of Sung Hyun Min, I kind of have to defend that just because he routinely outperforms his XG, and I've got to stick up for the statistical anomalies a little bit.
That's more than fair. Yeah, that's one way to interpret it as well. Yeah. With 6 overall coming up next, we have União Sao Paulo making a selection. And this was a pick that was originally owned by Sao Paulo, so no need to talk about a trade there. But so 6 overall, União Sao Paulo, and their selection is Alexander Selic.
Yes, Civic is the goal leader for the entirety of the Academy League with a massive 14 goals. Leading the Stockholm, I will not say the INBK because I do not know how to say them, but yeah, he absolutely demolished defenses all season long for Stockholm, and just Toman is a very well-known user across multiple sim leagues, especially the SHL. So seeing him, I believe, recreate here, because I believe he was in the SSL prior, is always good. And yeah, striker, 550 TP, very much at the near the top of his draft class. I believe he's only a few TP behind, was it Comeback Zach? So yeah, you're always getting a very good active with Toman.
This is a pick that is absolutely fascinating to me. A very pacey striker, and 14 goals from 12 xG is certainly no small feat. But what I really like is these traits that have been selected. Now, for those who aren't aware, most of you probably are. When you create a player, you're allowed to pick 2 traits to start with. But this player has picked a third trait during their academy season, so already working to build this very strong attacking presence. The traits in question, of course, are places shots, which is already a favorite of mine, gets forward whenever possible, and likes to round keeper. So this to me speaks of a threat both in and just in front of the box, getting that burst of speed to get into the box, and then once he's there, receiving the pass and just putting it in places that the keeper cannot get to. Uh, Certainly to me that has to contribute to that incredible goal tally, being able to find the places where the goalie can't do anything about it. And that's such an important feature for a striker to have. I would look for Alexander Selic to be a strong contender, perhaps even for the minor division Golden Boot next season. Certainly not a guarantee. I don't want to get in the business of making any definite predictions, but certainly an exciting pick here for USP ASP.
I mean, speaking of minor divisions, AS Paris did have, I believe they did finish 7th. So, like, I believe they do have a lot of inactives there. So bringing in someone like Toman up there directly will give him plenty of opportunities to shine from the get-go. And as he becomes the player up front for the Paris team and eventually Sao Paulo, I think he's got this opportunity to score plenty of goals. Now, I'm not saying he's going to score 14 or more, but I do believe he's going to be able to put more than a few in next season.
And really briefly before we move on, I did want to point out 7 assists from 4.22 XA. That's certainly not nothing either. It certainly when you're the guy in front of the keeper, it's going to be really tempting to shoot, but being able to facilitate your teammates as well, that that is a very important trait for a striker to have. And yeah, I think Selic is a very strong pick, especially here at pick number 6 for Sao Paulo and Paris. Very excited to see this player get on the field.
Before we move on, I just want to say that the INK in Stockholm is Idrottsklubb. Stockholms Idrottsklubb.
If you say so.
Yeah, in case soon if you want to try that.
I know better than to try it. Trust me.
It just means sports club, essentially, if you translate it to English.
Fair enough.
Okay, we have Sao Paulo coming up again in pick number 7 from a pick that was originally owned by Catalunya. That was traded, I believe, during last season's draft. So pick number 7, we have Steven Urkel.
Yeah, the first goalie picked in this draft. Not that many goalies played in the past season, but Steven Urkel did play, I believe, created slightly late because he has 11 out of 15. So, yeah, best average rating for any goalie in the past season. Has one player of the match, actually, which only, well, two goalies have a player of the match. Uh, yeah, Zoot is a well-known user as well, and I know was being eyed by other organizations, possibly as a later pick, since goalies tend to go further down. But you know, clearly USP wanted a striker and a goalie to go up front and at the very back, and now they just have to fill the middle.
And certainly this is a very strong pick. And anytime a team uses a pick on a goalkeeper, it's a very strong statement. And honestly, I cannot argue with it. This now, unfortunately, we aren't able to show goalkeeper stats here on this slide, but I do have the index open, and I can tell you that Steven Urkel. Now, I will again because of his slightly fewer appearances than other keepers that are eligible today. Uh, that Urkel did record a save percentage of 82.42% out of an expected save percentage of 87. So that is a lot of shots that Urkel specifically was able to stop from going in the back of the net and recorded 4 clean sheets as well, which from 11 appearances is a very solid return, conceding only 16 as well. So certainly, if you're going to pick a goalkeeper, it makes sense to pick one that can stop goals. Just saying.
This is also the first player we've had from the Academy champions, Victoria Falls.
It's actually surprising that we've gone all the way to the 7th pick, I believe, to see pick 7, to see a champion player get picked.
That being said, though, I think there was a difference of like 3 points from first to third in the academy. We've continued to joke, Soon and I, during the season that this has been one of the most even academy seasons to date. I believe we had like 3 or 4 match days that ended with all teams with the same points at like 15, 13 or something like that. So very even matchups. Only in the like last 4 or 5 match days we saw some separation between the teams.
Certainly another tick in favor of this class's strength, I would say. If they're all already able to contribute at a top level, then that can only mean good things for the league and for the teams that draft them.
Yeah, and before we move on, I just do want to put out another announcement real quick, is that we are still looking for someone to take over this organization. At the moment, it's being stewarded by the board of directors to keep it going, but we are still actively looking for someone to take this team over. So if you're interested, do send a message to the board of directors with an application, and who knows, maybe you get to be the manager for all these wonderful draftees.
Up next, we have the league champions, Reykjavik United, with their pick in the first round, pick number 8. And they have selected Marco Tentacles.
This is a very interesting pick for me. The left back, again from Victoria Falls. We were just saying, uh, we it took us several picks to get to the first pick, from the Academy Champions, and now we have two in a row here. So it seems that the other teams have gotten the memo now. But yes, Marco Tentacles, I believe you pronounced it. Has the
Tentacles.
traits tentacles. That I feel ashamed. I should have picked up on that.
I believe the user Squid. I mean, tentacles squid.
Yeah, you know what? Forget I said anything. I apologize. That's just embarrassing on my part.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. How could you
Anyway,
miss on that?
well, what
But
can I say?
yeah, Reykjavik and North Shore United were looking for some backline support. So this player will fit in perfectly on the backline of North Shore. And yeah, I mean, has played within expectations, has played a solid season, only has 6 appearances, so did create later than other players, but still has managed to be active enough to have an impact and also just as a user be present.
And it really cannot be understated how important that presence is to a team, to a locker room. Having somebody there who is willing to willing week in, week out, as I believe we well. Anyway, sorry, I had a bit of a brain fart there, but yes, somebody who's there, uh, week in, week out, able to contribute is so valuable. And I do want to point out their traits here on their player page are plays short, simple passes and marks opponent tightly. So that tells me that this player is more of a defensive fullback as opposed to the more attacking fullback that we tend to see, which absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think it's very solid, a very solid setup, especially with that 14 work rate. So again, just putting in the hard work, being a very strong presence at the back. Certainly nothing wrong with this pick. I think it's a strong pickup for Reykjavik North Shore and should shore up that North Shore back line.
Sure, if you say so. But
Well, to be
yes,
honest, I'm
I
not
believe so
sure.
as well. As someone on North Shore, with my current player, I believe so as well. But yeah, welcome
How many
to.
more times can you say "sure" in a sentence?
I'm not sure.
I'm sure we'll find out.
Oh
Who
God,
knows? With certainty, we will surely find our person.
And
we
as we
got
finish the
Project
first round,
Saint coming in as well here.
yeah, I would like to announce that Project Saint is going to join us for the following round.
Apologies for the late appearance, and also thank you very much for having me around again for the draft. I do believe that we did have like that the first one though. We had plenty of surprises, all good stuff, and also some slip ups as well with tentacles.
Well, I was hoping that we would move on from that. It seems like the classy thing to do would not be mention it too much.
We can go
Mm.
into the round summary actually, with the final pick of the draft being, final pick of the first round rather, being Marco Tentacles here.
Yeah, so after one round, we see a very good mix of offensive players and defensive players. Clearly, a lot of teams have favored the back line and just the defensive core up front. But teams as well, like Hollywood on their second pick, went offensive. Sao Paulo went defensive on their first pick, but also took a defensive. Schwarzwälder just picked up an offensive player. So there's a good mix so far, I would say, and there's also a decent mix of new users and veteran users within the sim leagues as a whole. So it's a very balanced draft so far.
Indeed, none of the players taken thus far play the same position as another. You've got a center midfielder and some attacking midfielders, but not in the same position. Uh, just leading into what you said, being a very balanced draft, and it just goes back to how deep this class is. There's a lot of talent at every position. So it's certainly been all of these players, I think, worthy of being first round selections. And I cannot wait to see a lot of them play. Of the last group that we've seen, I cannot get. I have to say, Sao Paulo with the 1-2, well, the 6-7, not really the 1-2 of Alexander Selic and Steven Urkel. That is a strong pair of picks for them. Being able to select those two players back to back is going to make a huge difference for them in the long term and in the short term for AS Paris.
But yeah, now that we turn our heads towards round two, we see this first round and we look at what's left, and there is a lot of quality that in past seasons would have also made the first round. It's just this draft class is extremely deep compared to the past few seasons. So I think we're ready to head over to round two, I believe.
We are, and we maybe saw a glance of this pick earlier. Yeah, might have clicked forward a bit too quickly. But the ninth overall pick is Buenos Aires, and they have selected Misa Kabiri.
So that is our second and last goalie, I believe, as a user of the draft. Another TPE leader up front in terms of total TPE. Yeah, I'll let Metafiction take it over because I have no visibility on stats.
Well, certainly. One thing I do want to point out before I go on to the statistics from this past season, a stat that isn't reflected here, but I think makes a world of difference here. Kabiri does have 15 in reflexes, which is a very important stat for a goalkeeper to have. So certainly going to be able to get down to stop shots a little more quickly than would be otherwise. In terms of stat line from this past season, uh, well, Sydney City we mentioned has had a little bit of a struggle this season in terms of performance. So these stats might be a little lower than one might expect. You see, we see here a save percentage of 63.96 compared to an X save percent of 82%. So I'm not especially uh, well versed on what that difference would reflect, but certainly going based off of attributes, I would say that Kabiri is a much better keeper than the stat line would suggest. Did concede 40 goals, uh, but did manage to keep a clean sheet. So I think Kabiri should have a lot better time in the SSL proper. Uh, Hopefully, should be able to shake off that the uh, the academy performance there. Uh, And despite that stat line, I have high hopes for Misal Gabiri here.
I think being a goalkeeper in the academy with the current class was a bit, how do you call it? They
A
didn't
rough
really,
ride.
yeah, a bit rough, yeah. A lot of offensive players being created, a lot of offensive players facing these goalkeepers that didn't necessarily have the best backline to support them. And I think that's the you mentioned there the save percentage and the expected save percentage. The difference there. Uh, you would expect Kabiri to maybe save more shots than what he actually did, but I believe that can be contributed to the weaker back line in front of him. That they didn't clear as many crosses that they should have. They didn't intercept as many passes. They didn't anticipate the runs of the forward opposition as much as they should have, leaving Kabiri essentially to his own, and that's not a easy task for anyone to do.
It is easy also to scapegoat a goalkeeper. Any of us who play Football Manager regularly are probably guilty of this, blaming it all on the goalkeeper when really the issue lies further forward or in sometimes behind the screen. But certainly, again, as you say, this this should be. I still love this pick for Buenos Aires and Athenai, and I think Kabiri should be in a good position to contribute in the short and long term.
Up next at pick number 10, we have Hollywood with their third selection this draft. And they pick. Is it Gerd Close?
I think it's
Gerd
good.
Close? Gert
Close.
Close? Yeah.
Good
Sounds
close.
reasonable.
Yeah, yeah, good close. Good close coming in here. I am so out of my depth right now. Apologies. But the close coming in from Stockholm Academy. As you can see here, 15 acceleration, 15 pace, 15 finishing. As a striker, you can pretty much tell he's in to score goals and do it from pace and position. Had a pretty good season, pretty decent season as well. If underwhelming by analytics, even so, there's still that bit of growth. 8 goals, 6 assists, and a 7.69 rating. That pretty good there. Muford is a person as well in regards.
Yes, Muford is a person, and one needs to remember that Gerd Klose did play alongside Alexander Selig, so you know what I believe was a double striker formation, and together, one of them had 14 goals, one other had 8 goals, so 22 goals from your strikers combined. Stockholm had a very good year up front. So, and part of that success is the Klose-Selig combination. So, Hollywood picking up the other half of that combination is going to help them immensely up front. And maybe a season where once in a while they did struggle to get those goals up front and ended up with a draw instead of a potential win.
An absolutely scary Stockholm attack, to be sure. 15 finishing, 15 excel in pace. Also, I would like to point out 15 anticipation, which I would say is probably an important uh, stat for strikers to have. Excuse me for a second. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Uh, but yes. Also, the traits on offer here are shoots with power and likes to try to beat offside trap. So more of a power striker as opposed to a finesse striker that Selic was earlier.
Maybe that's why they worked so well in Stockholm. The finesse and power combination.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, Klose is a player that ended up with 33 offsides, so which, by the way, leads the league, the Academy League, by 6 over Selig. So the two German strikers lead the league in offsides. That just gives you a bit of an idea as to, if they win, it's a goal. If they don't, it's offside. And, they made it work, I guess.
Just wants
Well,
to take advantage.
I should point out the stat says likes to try to beat the offside trap. Doesn't mean it always works.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I was expecting more laughs from that. I apologize.
No, you brought a valid point.
We'll leave lashing for other times.
Fair enough.
Hollywood is up next as well with the 11th pick. A pick originally owned by Tokyo. And so with this was also a trade happening prior to the draft, so we'll get to a draft trade soon.
Hey.
But with the 11 overall pick, Hollywood selects Joao Cabral.
Oh. Joao Cabral. I presume Spanish. No, Brazilian, I do apologize.
Brazilian or Portuguese, I think.
Brazilian, Belo Horizonte.
Oh.
But, yep. Joao Cabral, Phantom, coming in from Sydney City. Pretty solid as well in terms of just being obviously being a centre back. 15 tackling, 15 composure, 15 determination. Wait, shoots with power though.
Yes,
Y- y-
the traits on screen aren't actually accurate. I can tell you that this player's actual traits are marks opponent tightly and, very interestingly, gets crowd going, which is one we don't see a lot of, but that I do kind of like personally.
That is actually, yeah, that's pretty. having a crowd pleaser around, that'll be something to get your players morale up, especially when it comes down to the big games and late into clutch.
Absolutely.
Very much, I presume, more of a no nonsense setup right now, having, as mentioned, the composure, and determination. But you can never know with how they go out, and being that they had only 6 appearances and a 6.83, they have a lot of growing to do. But there's definitely potential in here.
Absolutely, and there's one stat I would like to highlight is pass percentage. Is that Joao Cabral had the highest successful pass percentage uh, of the league in you know, six appearances with 409 successful passes out of 433. So it's not a negligible amount. Granted, it's not as many as other players, but still, they're a player that when they pass the ball, the player receiving it is receiving it correctly. So very safe passes, very good passes. And sometimes that's just what you want from a defenseman. You don't want that ball to be taken by a midfielder or striker and then just into your own net.
Absolutely. You cannot afford mistakes in defense. And that's true of any sport, whether it be soccer or hockey or really anything. And
Baseball?
certainly with this, well, yeah, even baseball, if anybody still watches that.
Shots
Apologies
fired.
to any baseball fans out there.
Shohei Otani will come over to football, and he'll still be the best player in the world. You heard it here first.
As a bold prediction, let's see if it pays off. But in the meantime, again, strong a strong presence in defense for Hollywood Capstad. I believe they took a defender, or at least a more defensive presence with their first pick as well. So certainly building up that back line, and certainly can't fault them for it.
Not one bit, no.
So with the 12th overall pick coming up next, we have AC Romana making their first selection in this draft. And they select Emmanuel Blackman. Blackman.
No comment. But yeah, Emmanuel Blackman. 14 dribbling, 14 first touch, and 14 passing as well. As a centre back, so more of a ball playing centre back in this case. We have for Blackman. Um, and it does convert as well, having an expected assist for 1.76, and a high pass percentage, 93.38. So
Yeah, I believe their pass percentage is among the top 5 in the Academy League. One thing I do want to point out is the 3 goals that Blackman had in the past season with an expected of 0.4. I believe a lot of those were from headers, from corners. But
Actually,
yeah,
I just want to point out there, at least 2 of them were absolute bangers from outside the box, if I remember correctly. They were like I have an image of at least one of the goals in my mind right now, and it's just a lot of people between Blackman and the keeper, and then it's just a banger, a power shot right into into the corner of the net.
Oh,
Like,
You gotta love
how
a
does
center
how
back
does
that can
those
shoot.
goes in? It's just
But it's the kind of player that, from what I've been being told, they were all bangers from outside the box after a corner. So I remembered it slightly incorrectly. Um, but yes, basically they like to shoot smack in the middle, and if it goes in, it goes in. If it doesn't, it's gonna kill someone along the way. I don't know. Um, but yeah, very powerful shot, and yeah.
hey, technical
You've-
player. And I can confirm as well that he is fourth in terms of pass percentage, in the league. Manuel Blackman. So, oh boy.
certainly a very, certainly a very attacking center back. If ever one existed, this would be him. I can confirm the traits that have been selected for Emmanuel Blackman are tries killer balls often, which, as we mentioned, the pass percentage that certainly certainly helps there. Also tries to play way out of trouble, which is a very risky but very high reward strategy. So going to be playing the ball out of defense, trying to find that pass to kickstart perhaps a counterattack or an offensive move. Uh, certainly going to be very interesting. Is certainly going to be very interesting to watch this player play. Certainly won't be boring, I would wager.
Far
I
from
thought you were going to say something about tries killer balls often was his shot. Just either it goes in or it kills someone, like Azun said.
You know what? You know what? I feel ashamed that I missed that opportunity. That is actually pretty brilliant.
what a lethal mess.
Yeah, and as Toman points out in the chat as well, like two of those shots had a really nice curve as well. So maybe not a central defender you want inside the box in a corner. Maybe just outside is good enough.
Well, certainly you'll want him inside the box, but perhaps in the opposition box.
Oh yes, yes.
Think of him like a Rolls Royce, someone that you just let him smoothly roll along, give smooth passes. But if you try and take him out for off roading in the box, you're going to come up with scraps and bangers. Like,
We have our first draft trade to show. And that trade is for 13th overall.
oh,
So Schwarzwälder is trading Toki Wartooth, Isabella Cortez, and their second round pick, the 13 overall pick in this draft, to União Sao Paulo. And in return, they will get the players Heather Bull and Owen 44. So Owen 44, Toki Wartooth, and Isabella Cortez are all on expiring contracts. So this was essentially just trading the extension rights to these players during the draft. And then Heather Bull and the second overall pick are the more permanent assets, if you would call it that, of this trade.
It was a very interesting trade for sure. I can say from watching the minor division, Toki Wartooth was a very important defensive presence for Montreal for a lot of last season. So certainly Paris getting some extra help back there. And of course, Owen 44 now playing for Schwarzwalder. Schwarzwalder? This is why I shouldn't attempt these names. It's because my stupid American tongue cannot comprehend them.
now to be fair with
Uh,
this one, Rosvalda is a outright pain to say. Like Black Forest is what we usually say, but
yeah, I
Schwarzwalder.
figured I'd at least give it a try. SFV, nevertheless, getting Heather Bull and Owen 44. That's a very honestly, for those players and the second overall pick, it's not it's not bad compensation. I gotta say.
So with this this past week acquired, 13th overall pick, União Sao Paulo has chosen to select. No, we're not there. We're back in another one. There we go. We have 13 overall here. Marton Shelezi.
Martin Shilis. Wait, that's how you say Shilisi.
I believe it's Hungarian.
Oh. Memories of Hilemsik.
Oh yeah,
My
the Slovakia.
And now you
no,
all feel my pain.
no, I had that with Greeks. Papadopoulos past. Uh,
Yeah.
Well, regardless of the ability to pronounce this player's name, certainly a very interesting player for União Sao Paulo to move back into the second round to get. Central attacking midfielder, has the traits of tries killer balls often and gets into opposition area. So going to be facilitating from the front, it would seem. Can also play out wide on the right or a little further back in central midfield. So versatile player to be sure. And the passing and decisions of 13 apiece and vision of 13 as well. Very pass focused player, looking to play others in. Uh, should be very interesting to watch them pull the strings further forward for Sao Paulo and or Paris.
And Sao Paulo continues to build on to their previous picks as well. So a striker, a goalie, and now a central attacking midfielder. So they're filling up really well for the future.
Similar to Hollywood, Hollywood made 4 selections in the first 11 picks, and now Sao Paulo is close behind with their third pick here at 13, and then they have another pick coming up at 14.
Certainly, both teams feeling that they need a rebuild, and this is the class to do it, if you ask me. So, I think both of these organizations are going to be very scary in a couple seasons' time.
Did you get the traits of Shalezi?
Yes, their traits are tries killer balls often and gets into opposition areas. So it would seem to me to get to the edge of the box, just inside of it, and just put through that final pass to a striker or a winger making that run and facilitating the goals, which is something any team needs, I think. So a very strong pick here.
And considering
So
that Medellin did get a lot of goals from all over the place, the ball was distributed really well.
I believe Shalezi was also playing as a central midfielder for Atletico instead of a central attacking midfielder. So a bit further behind than what they would normally play, I think. Still performed well from that position. So União Sao Paulo is coming up again at pick number 14. And at pick number 14, they have selected Squidward Tortellini.
Squidward Tortellini being Dino Dog. Wait, Din Dog.
Din Dog,
Ice.
yes.
I screwed that up. But yeah. Squidward Tortellini. Right winger. Wait, from the Bikini Bottom?
I believe that's a reference to SpongeBob.
Yep, it is. Ah, yeah, no, makes sense. It's Squidward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did that took me a while. But yes.
Interestingly, the second player with squid involved in their player or username in the same
Yes,
draft.
Yep.
yes, this one obviously pronounced Squidward Tortellini. I know this much. Uh, Jokes aside, very bad jokes aside, this player can dictate the tempo and uh, actually can apparently can curl the ball, which is certainly something the crowd likes to see. Uh, I I will say, plays primarily on the right, but can play on the left or in the center as well. So a very versatile attacking threat there. 15 dribbling as well. Should be able to beat. Should be trying to beat some of these wide defenders and other wingers that they come across. Apart from that, their other best stats are 12s, which again looks at first like a weakness, but I would argue is a sign of versatility. So again, this could be a very dangerous player to see get into attacking positions and then potentially laying a pass further into the box to send to a more central teammate.
I believe also the 350 TPE is not necessarily reflective of the earning that Dindog has done. I believe that there is a lot of unclaimed TPE, maybe around 450 or something like that in total. Should be the correct value here. But alas, if the user doesn't claim them, it's not going to show up here on screen, unfortunately.
But hey, means that GMs do the research if they can make sure that they claim them. Always
That is
claim your
true.
TPE, fellas.
Leave
That
no
is true.
TPE behind. That's the motto of the SSL. One of many.
So this was União Sao Paulo's fourth selection in this draft. Coming up next is a team who hasn't made any selections prior to this pick. At 15, we have CF Catalunya, and they have selected Daedalus Hawkins. Hawkins.
So Daedalus Hawkins comes to us apparently from Mount Olympus, Greece, which is a very which I have to wonder how you get enough oxygen up there to survive. But nevertheless, certainly a an intriguing pick here, an intriguing first pick, I suppose, for Catalonia's soul. Uh, has traits of dictates tempo and tries killer balls often. So again, looking to control the the flow of the game from that wide midfield position. Certainly should be an interesting threat, being able to start moves and you know winning back the ball and getting the ball forward, and certainly going to be very interesting to see how they fit into that Catalonia Soul system. Um, and yeah, that the 15 anticipation as well is certainly a strong asset to this type of player. I think being able to react out wide on the wings should be very interesting to see how this pans out for Catalonia and for Hawkins.
Yeah, and just quick discussion I want to have is we've seen a lot of midfielders and attacking midfielders with tries killer ball traits. So just more going on a very offensive group of players this year.
Indeed.
Certainly more willing to take those risky passes, trying to link up uh, link up the attack with the defense, and potentially could make for either a very exciting attacking game or perhaps could result in the importance of more defensive midfielders being able to cut out passes uh, in the midfield to stop attacking moves. It'll be very
That
interesting to see how this shifts.
that and also have that trend reaching out to strikers as well. This like killer balls would benefit more of those strikers that can make use of runs and so instead of the I say traditional or more old fashioned target strikers. quite an interesting change is that towards these days.
I believe the only pure target player that the SSL has seen is Skyrise in Tokyo, um, who I mean he scores goals. We saw that in the World Simulation Football Classic, the international tournament we had over December here, and Skyrise played for Canada and scored I think 6 goals on 2 games or something like that in the round robin. Um, but yeah, it's you mentioned Saint. It's a lot of strikers that are more quick on their feet rather than just being tall and strong. And these types of wingers or wide midfielders certainly need to make use of that space in front of the strikers. These killer balls and stuff like that.
And certainly a reflection the game at large has gone over the last few decades, transitioning from that more fixed attacking presence into a more mobile striker. Strikers needing to be more mobile, needing to make those runs, needing to find space in the box and create, kind of rely on those shorter passes. So a very fascinating tactical evolution that seems to have made its way to the SSL in force and simply continues to evolve as the seasons go on.
Very much so.
Up next, we have the final pick of the second round. Hollywood doesn't want to stay tied with Sao Paulo any longer with the number of picks. So their fifth pick in this draft at pick number 16 is Jalen Brooks.
Jalen Brooks, TJ is a veteran from the leagues. Probably the same case as other 350 TPE actives is that they are active but have not claimed the TPE yet, which sometimes does cause them to fall down. But played on Victorious Falls, had a very good 742 rating in 13 apps, so slightly late creation, missed only 2 games, and had 4 goals, 5 assists, which is pretty much on line with what was expected out of them for a left attacking midfielder.
Right. So left attacking midfield, 12 acceleration, pace, and crossing. They're pretty much more well-rounded as a winger as well, aren't they?
Certainly a lot of 12s on the board here, which is one of those natural resting points when you're creating a character, a player rather, to have them be significantly above average while also giving them room to grow in the future. And their traits are gets forward whenever possible and knocks ball past opponent. So we'll likely be seeing them trying to dribble past defenders out on the wing there and trying to constantly harass the back line, be a threat to either score or pass, or as their 12 crossing would suggest, send in those high balls for strikers or other aerial threats to knock into the back of the net.
Considering the average rating of 7.42 is quite high, in considering, and the amount of goals is only 4 or 5. I believe Selic and Klose, they had a lot more goals, but a lower average rating. So Brooke seems to be doing a lot of things well outside of just scoring goals and creating chances.
Certainly, and to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what contributes to the average to the match rating, but I have to believe that making those offensive moves, being able to dribble past defenders, getting yourself into position to to start a move or send in a decisive ball or even just even just link up effectively in the pass I think that does genuinely help with that, and that high rating, even with those low goal and assist numbers, is a sign to me that this player is getting in the right positions, is contributing effectively, certainly. And again, I think this is a very underrated pick by Hollywood and Capstat. I think as long as they can, as long as they can claim the outstanding TPE, I think this could turn out to be a very decisive pick for them.
And that does conclude the second round. So just a quick recap of the second round. We did start with a goalie with Buenos Aires picking Kabiri, followed by a striker in Klose, and then a run of defensemen with Cabral and Blackman. Then we turn towards the midfield for the last four picks with Scelesi, Tortellini, Hawkins, and Brooks. I will not apologize if I said the Hungarian name wrong. That's how I read it. Yeah. And yeah, USP and Hollywood very big on loading up this draft, as we can see. They still have picks down the line, and yeah.
And honestly, a lot of these players in other classes probably would have been first round talents. Just again, such a deep class that we're seeing such strong selections, such potentially really good contributors falling this far. It's not an indictment on their skill at all. It's just a testament to how many users have joined or recreated during this past season, and it's a dare I say a historically deep class.
Yeah, it's a very strong class, and we'll even see round three has some pretty good gems that might just prove everyone else before wrong in terms of being a stealer for the future. I believe that down the line there, especially when you see that spoiler alert, I guess maybe that 23 is a pass, and then the round four is all a pass, but there's still some teams picking afterwards. You're telling yourself, hey, some teams passed instead of picking. I know I can prove them wrong, make them regret that they passed, or make them regret to have skipped me over 4, 5, 6, 7 times. You know, so the you know there's plenty of opportunities in the future as well. Um, but I think we're ready to begin with round three, unless someone else has anything.
No, we are ready.
I
We
have
have
nothing to add. Let's move.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we have their third round starting with Buenos Aires making their third pick, first pick of each round. And at pick number 17, Buenos Aires selects David Polser.
Yeah, Polser was, I believe, the lead striker for the Victoria Falls team that won the championship with 8 goals. Polster and Hjalmarsson were absolutely the equivalent of the Civic and Klose pair for Victoria Falls. So, yes, massive 776 rating. It does put him third in the league, top of his team as well on that front. And honestly, a very well rounded offensive player, as you can see with pace, strength, and finishing, all at 14.
Indeed, a strong finisher of the ball, at least as far as the attributes dictate and the 8 goals dictate. As far as traits, one thing that interests me, this player has the place's shots trait, which again is a very strong trait, but also has the trait runs with ball rarely. So that suggests to me that they're going to be focusing more on getting into the right position off the ball, or perhaps just or perhaps even just trying to park themselves in the box to try and force trying to get into those positions with 14 strength, perhaps more trying to muscle defenders off the ball to get themselves the space they need to finish. So that is certainly a different type of striker than what we've seen so far in this class. But it'll be very interesting to see if this approach works in the SSL. I'm sure there is an application for it. So I suppose we'll see.
I mean, it's worked so far in Academy League with 8 goals. Even if there's a 9 expected, it's within the range of it, and the assists are there as well. So they're either passing the ball or to someone to play like a 1-2 kind of play, or they're just waiting for the ball to come and just shoot it right away and score. So, it's an interesting style of play. And we'll see how it works with more active rosters, because academy leagues can be pretty bare filled with inactives and that are not progressing. But once you get into the higher TPs, it's going to be very interesting to see how this build performs.
And something else I just spotted, they've allocated their positional experience. Their main position is of course striker, but they've also added proficiency in left attacking mid and central defense. So this could be it could be an attempt at sort of a two-way player that could play either as a striker that's more focused on the aerial, the finishing, that sort of thing, or they could also play further back as needed if their team needs to shore up the defense. So certainly a very fascinating approach here by this player, and I think should find plenty of space to contribute for Buenos Aires Atheni, uh, whether it be at forward or in defense, or perhaps both. Who knows?
And we have David here in the chat as well saying that your analysis of Holzer, the player, is absolutely correct. Focusing on positioning myself or getting the ball from the defenders and shooting as soon as possible. And with that, we can move on to Hollywood yet again, making their 6th selection in this draft. So a lot of trades happening prior to this draft that allowed Hollywood to have these many selections. And at 18 overall, Hollywood selects Cameron Bailey III.
Yes, Cameron Bailey III is the player with the highest rating in the entire Academy League. Only 6 appearances, so they were a fairly late create in the season. They're already up to 486 TPE as of whenever the scraper did the draft. And I think the one thing I do want to point out is the fact that their highest trait is flair, which is a very interesting trait to have as your lead trait.
I wouldn't exactly expect flair, but then again, if there's any position that would have flair, it would be this. Would be attacking mid.
And certainly to add on to that, in addition to that incredibly high starting flair attribute, they also have the traits tries tricks and curls ball. So this could very much Cameron Bailey could very easily become one of the most electrifying players in SSL at this rate.
One
It does
word.
seem that
One opinion.
the performances in the academy has been electrying with 4 goals and 4 assists. So I think you're right. I think we might have an exciting player to watch in the SSL.
I guess the real question is how this player will fit into a team context. Certainly, it's a bit of a cliche, obviously, but certainly with a player with this much individual skill, with that flair, with those traits of being able to try all of these fancy moves. Can they make that work on the field in the SSL? Can they use it for the benefit of the team? I think that they stand a very good chance of doing just that. But certainly all of the excitement in the world is great, of course, but it doesn't really matter if your team is consistently losing by 3 and 4 goals. As long as you can contribute, that is going to be the key metric by which this player is judged in the future. That said, I think based on admittedly limited sample size, based on these attributes that I'm seeing, I think Cameron Bailey III is set up for success, especially in the midst of this huge youth movement here that we're seeing at Hollywood Capstead.
Hollywood is essentially drafting an entire roster this draft, it seems. I believe at the end they will have 10 picks made, or eight or 10 picks made, or something like that. Sixth pick right now. And we have another trade to announce for pick number 19. We have a trade between Reykjavik and Schwarzwälder. Reykjavik owning, or previously owning, the Tokyo third round pick, 19 overall, and they traded that to Schwarzwälder in exchange for a season 15 third round pick. So essentially Reykjavik trading for futures and Schwarzwälder trading into the draft, into the third round again.
Which makes sense because Reykjavik is very much loaded both in Reykjavik and in North Shore, so moving back is not going to hurt them at all.
And with this 19th overall selection that Schwarzwälder picked up, they have selected... Oh, sorry. Let's see. They have selected... This is what I want to do. And like this. The Marcus Brothers.
No props. Actually, you have to admit props for the name. That's an amusing name to have there. But yep, the Marcos brothers coming in from Sydney and left winger as well. An interesting one at that. Actually, need to check because I do remember you mentioning about skills being a bit interesting.
Yes,
Yeah,
the traits
I guess
are...
we'll make a quick reminder that the traits shown on screen are not the correct traits. This is an issue with the scrapper.
Yeah.
Usually Metafiction will be the one mentioning them.
Yes, I can go ahead and I can actually tell you what the actual traits here are. Those are runs with ball often and gets forward whenever possible. So again, it seems like a very common combination. Bringing the ball forward and even coming forward when they're off the ball. So always trying to get into that attacking third, making themselves present, forcing the opposition defense to deal with them as a threat. So certainly with that 15 pace and 15 dribbling, they should be fairly effective in doing that.
Indeed, indeed. Um, just as just as well. Yeah, those are more traits you find for winger. How many games did he have again? Oh, 15 games shot per game around. So whilst there are definitely some improvements that needed for finishing, because you can have finishing wingers around in this league, I do believe. The pace and dribbling definitely allows them to be a pretty effective when it comes to setting up. 12 key passes isn't exactly anything to scoff at.
I should point out the 15 pace is impressive, but the acceleration is currently at 12. So certainly not bad by any means, but could stand to improve that to really bring that pace to bear. Getting to that top speed quickly is key for any player that relies on pace. So hopefully that will be something that they can work on in their rookie season. But even with that in mind, already a fairly strong setup for success should contribute from the left side from day one.
Would not be not be bad at all.
Then, as we saw a bit spoiled earlier, we also have a trade for the 20th overall pick. We have Schwarzfelder again trading up from 21 to 20, and Romana trading back from 20 to 21. So just a couple of third-round picks, consecutive third-round picks changing hands in this trade to allow Schwarzfelder to pick back-to-back at 19 and 20. And with the 20th overall pick, the Schwarzwälder organization has selected I'm Just Ken.
Absolutely. I'm Just Ken was among the top 10 in the average player rating. Played as a central attacking midfielder supporting the powerful offense of Stockholm. In fact, I believe they were tied the third on team scoring. So, a good chunk of goals, of secondary goals came from them. Do want to point out the name Fake Muford is absolutely fantastic.
I believe the Discord user is DeWalt instead. So Fake Muford being the forum username. I believe joining at the same time as Muford, the real Muford. I call it that. Gerd Klose, who was selected the round earlier.
Certainly a very interesting setup on this player. A lot of stats in the double digits, even if they aren't high. Very well-rounded player, it would seem. I do want to point out their traits, again, obviously not quite accurately reflected here thanks to the scraper issues, but their traits are shoots with power and looks for pass rather than attempting to score. So certainly built as, it would seem, more of a pure facilitator rather than uh, an out and out shooting threat. But it still, such was the prolific nature of that Stockholm attack that this player still managed to record 5 goals. So when they how will that translate to the SSL? It remains to be seen, but certainly should be a strong base to push forward and play in those attacking threats. And certainly, to get the obvious joke out of the way, Schwarzwalder will be hoping that he is indeed Kenuff.
God.
I'm sorry. It had to be done. I took the bullet. You're welcome.
That's fine. And even though, you made this pun, I believe we are ready to move on to the next pick.
Yes, we are. Pick 21, we have Romana coming in with another pick this draft. And they have selected Kant Kanwai.
But can he or can't he?
Not sure.
Not sure.
Well, Kant Kanwai did play all 15 games this past season. Central defensive midfielder in a world full of offensive midfielders and attackers. Did decently good for himself. Only 1 goal, 0 assists, so slightly below the assist expectations for a player. Was part of a Sydney team, which I believe we filled a bit later than other teams, and I don't know if they're still active, but they have a good starting TPE to be an interesting option early on in the season for, I guess, Inter London. An Inter London team that did win the minor league championship and surprisingly the SSL Cup. So it'll be very interesting for a player like that to join the team.
And looking at their attributes on their player page, this is a player that it seems to me can contribute both defensively and in starting attacking moves with the traits. Brings ball out of defense and tries long range passes. So will be very important in linking the defense play with Inter. If Inter, so in Inter London play out of defense, he'll be their first point of contact, getting the ball to him to get the ball into the midfield where it can be effectively played by their more forward players, but also out of possession with with 13 in marking and generally a more defense lying a little bit deeper should be able to help anchor that midfield as well when London don't have the ball. And with 15 pace, 14 acceleration as well, just a just one of those do it all kind of guys in defensive midfield. Certainly should be perhaps one of the more unsung players in this draft, as center defensive mids tend to be, but nevertheless should be an absolute rock, hopefully, for this organization.
I believe they built initially as a libero, so a bit more active offensively as a central defender. I guess you would say is where they would play as that role, as a libero role, but central defensive midfield. I don't know. I don't remember. I think it was an issue of the role not being available for that position and realizing that a bit too late when selecting the positional experience. But with that, we can move on to pick number 22, and that's Hollywood again, coming up with their 7th pick this draft. Dom, the manager of Hollywood, mentioned in the chat earlier that they were 8 picks selected. I'm counting more than 8 picks, so I don't know if if there are any picks that you forgot about. But as their 7th pick, we have Ali Tamime coming to Hollywood at pick number 22.
So this seems to me to be another one of those pass focused wide midfielders here. At least going by their traits, shoots from distance and tries long range passes. So certainly a threat from outside the box, but it would seem will be just as likely, if not more so, to try and play other players in midfield and attacking midfield. Uh, certainly going to be very interesting to see how they slot in. That TPE of 356 I'm showing is a little low, but there is, as we've mentioned with other players, certainly plenty of TPE still on the table to claim. Should they be able to claim all of that TPE and apply it to their player, should be well positioned to contribute here.
Yeah, I don't have much to say on this player. They do have a very solid 733 rating. Honestly, good goals and assists for a left midfielder, if you think about it. Um, and yeah, overall, looks like the stats are fairly well balanced. So it's just a matter of how will they distribute those TPE afterwards.
I believe Tamime played as a central midfielder in the academy, because we already have, or Victoria Falls already have the Brooks on the left side, Jalen Brooks, picked earlier. So in order to not have too many players on the same side, I think Tamimi was moved to a secondary position as a central midfielder.
Yes, I'm showing that this player can. They are primarily set up as a left midfielder, but can contribute almost as well in central and on the right side. So certainly a very versatile in midfield. So hopefully that hopefully that will allow them to fit in a little better at Hollywood Capstad based on that team's needs.
If we go back to the board here, the draft summary board, we have one more pick remaining in the third round. And as we mentioned earlier, there are some passes already on the board. Essentially, what a pass is a player, or sorry, a team that have decided that they don't want to use their draft picks this draft for any reason. Usually, it accounts to the team having too many players, or rather, too few spots left remaining to get some more players in, and maybe none of the other teams were eager to make a trade for this pick. So we have a lot of passes coming up in the fourth round, and our first is now here at pick 23.
The one thing to remember is that once a team passes, they're done. You will not see them pick again. That's the rules of the draft. You can't just pass one pick and then come back, next round with your next pick. If you're passed, you're done.
Correct. Yes. So with pick 24, making Hollywood's 8th selection of this draft, we have selecting Jonas Conwald.
Yeah, Jonas Conwald, very late create, only has 5 appearances. Still sports a 696 average rating. For a right midfielder, it's not too bad. They did join on a Sydney FC, which I believe had a bit more inactives than other teams as well, so that might affect their overall stats. But again, in the Academy League, the stats is just a discussion point. After that, it's really what can you make out of it, and how active can you be, and are you claiming all the TPEs and catch-up TPE that you can. I'll let Metafiction go with the attributes and everything else.
Well, certainly. So as you can see, obviously on the screen, that Peace 13 is their highest stat, which again, always a very important stat, especially here in the SSL. Speed is key, as one might say. Uh, their traits that they have selected are shoots from distance and gets forward whenever possible. So whereas the previous midfielder with that last pick seems to be more of a more passing oriented, this one I would say is more about getting forward, getting into the attacking third, and stirring up trouble and trying to create as many chances for themselves and for their teammates. A lot of 11s here on the on the or excuse me, the attribute screen. Um, Again, certainly a sign of being well-rounded, uh, and once and with a little bit of TPE investment, this could turn out to be a very strong pick here for Hollywood and Capstad, as long as, again, as long as they can as long as they can get this player to uh, claim as much as they can and try and uh, continue to develop. I think there's plenty of potential here. But yes, that pace does stand out, and it plays well with the gets forward whenever possible trait. So hopefully, should be able to come forward up that right wing. Because and this is a very right-sided player. Their main position being right midfielder, but also playing right attacking midfielder and right wing back. So certainly we'll be looking to make a difference on that right side.
I believe the right wing back is the position they played in the academy in these 5 appearances with Squidward Tortellini already having the right attacking midfielder position on Sydney. So more of a defensive position, or at least defensive starting position in these 5 appearances. Still getting 2 assists from those.
And
that
with that, yeah, go ahead. I was going to say
yeah,
the same thing.
yeah, that concludes the third round of the draft. And as we mentioned before, there are going to be a lot of passes moving forward. So there's going to be a lot of skips in terms of the pick numbers. So with pick number 27 coming up next, we have Tokyo. And they select Anthony Santos.
Oh.
Yeah. Anthony Santos has been there from, well, 6 apps, so that tells you that he was a past midseason create. As a striker, Sydney was already having issues, but still managed to get 1 goal in those 6 games, so adapting to the team decently well. Focused on finishing, acceleration, and dribbling. So it's kind of a bit of a player that seems to be wanting to do everything in the box. I don't want to say by himself, but kind of wants to do the dribbling, wants to be the one scoring. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly has the makings potentially of a complete forward type, being able to, as you say, trying to do it all. Uh, with that pace of, with the acceleration of 13, but pace only at 10, so it's not a high ceiling, but he gets there quickly, and certainly room for development on both those attributes. As far as traits go, they come with arrives late in opponent's area and shoots with power. So they'll be looking to potentially find a little bit more space in the area by delaying their runs into the area. And once they do, the hope is that they can put the ball in the back of the net with regularity with that 14 finishing. And shoots with power certainly will aid in trying to get the ball past the keeper. So certainly a lot of potential a as a striker. It'll be very interesting to see how they develop, and frankly, this could be a very underrated pick if all goes well. Uh, but yes, a striker who can also play central attacking midfield, excuse me, and right attacking midfield. So we'll be trying to impose their will in that attacking third.
Good description there.
Tokyo picking up a striker here. And then we have pick number 28, AC Romana, coming in and selecting Atlas Uzun.
Yeah. Afino is a well-known user, especially in the SHL. Has had, I built a central defensive midfielder with this time, and overall, I would say, champion Victoria Falls Eagles has 2 goals, 2 assists, which are slightly above his expected, and finished the year with a 715 average rating. So overall, a solid season for a defensive midfielder. Believe they went very late because they are now inactive, but if someone can get them to be active again, it would be an absolute steal for Romana London. Yeah.
Very much so. And you never know as well if like GMs that can, well, I say GMs, but managers that can outright bring people back. Those are ones that you those are the ones that you have to be very careful of, because if they drop someone who they believe they can bring back, keep an eye out.
And absolutely, even if, and it must be said, even if even if this user doesn't come back, this player is still fairly well set up at the moment, at least to contribute in the short term. In that more defensive midfielder position, with 12 marking, 13 heading, certainly set up to contribute defensively, but also has 13 long shots and 12 finishing. So if they do get further up the pitch, they might uncork a thunderbolt out of nowhere. This seems like that type of player. As far as traits go, this is a very interesting combination, and I kind of like it, to be honest. Their traits are winds up opponents and gets crowd going. So this is a player that is all about the mental games, trying to force opponents to make mistakes, get them riled up, get them not in their clear head, while also rallying the crowd to their team's support. Hopefully, being able to, hopefully the sort of player to break the opponent's momentum and strengthen his own team's momentum. So certainly a very interesting combination of traits. One I don't think I've seen before, but I think this could be potential for a real momentum changer. It is all going to depend on whether they can bring Afino back to being active status. If they do, then this is going to be a really strong pick for this late in the draft.
Indeed. Although it could backfire, it could all go wrong in terms of crowd movement, crowd, and they just decide to get a little bit into the ref's head too much.
Yeah, I'm very interested to actually. Like, I don't know exactly how those traits affect the game and how the refs see them inside Football Manager. It would be very interesting to see since we now have a player with these two traits, what the effect would be. I don't know if you have the stats, how many cards or fouls did Uzun get in the academy this season? Have that?
Well, let me refresh the index here. It has sort of gone a little. Sorry, and this might take a minute, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
I can certainly at least try to give you an idea of what I would say that is the combination of getting the crowd going and winding up the opponents. It's fascinating to me to see how those would play off of one another. Um, let's see here. I'm not showing that they have. I don't know. I don't think they have. Well, they certainly. It would seem that they don't actually have any yellow cards,
Oh,
at least
okay.
from this past season. Either that or I'm misinterpreting the statistics here. I'm still scrolling through. Okay, well, I actually now that I think about it, I'm not sure I see their name at all, which is a little odd. Going through
Oh,
again. I apologize for the. This is making for riveting watching. I'm sure of it. Ah, here we go. Two yellow cards actually,
two yellow cards. Okay.
and 13 appearances is certainly. I would say that's not too far out of the ordinary, especially for a central defensive midfielder. So
True.
And they also made 25 fouls and only one foul again. So it doesn't necessarily show that the winds up opponent traits actually does something to provide the ref with chance to give a free kick to Uzun's team. But interesting to see how that will play out further in the SSL. Next up,
let's move up.
yes, next up we have pick number 34. Hollywood with their 9th selection in this draft. And Hollywood selects Nachi Bergkamp.
Yeah, Nachi Bergkamp, an active in the Discord, not necessarily on the TPE side of things, but has had an actually very interesting season. 8 goals, 0 assists for 715 rating in 15 appearances. This is a pure goal scorer, which loves to score, as you can tell. Tied with Gert Klose and David Polster for second in the league in goals. Just to give you an idea, led his team Atletico Medellin in goals. So this is a player who has definitely built something really solid from the get-go. It's just a matter of, can the management get him to spend the TP that he probably has into improving the player.
And I also want to point out that in addition to that eye-watering, frankly, 17 finishing, some very other strong attributes: 13 anticipation, 13 composure, 14 off the ball. So not only are they able to finish, they can get into those positions to actually get to the ball, to get into that shooting position, and then have the composure to be able to fire it home. So that absolutely plays. The 17 finishing is all well and good, but without those other attributes, it's not as useful as one would think. So certainly has the tools to be a very strong threat on those final balls. Like certainly. Uh, as far as traits, likes to try to beat the offside trap and shoots with power. Certainly again has the tools to fire in the goals. My only question is whether they can what is how effectively they get into those positions in the first place. Certainly, again, with 14 off the ball and good anticipation, should be getting in those positions regularly. But uh, with a pace of only 5 is what worries me. Not being they can get to their acceleration is 12, which is quite high, or at least for a draftee. But with only 5 pace, they're not going to be getting. They can get to their top speed, but it's not going to be a high top speed. So the question is whether they can really make be in those positions to begin with. Certainly room for increase to that pace as time goes on if they can claim some of that TBE and pour it into the pace. But yeah,
But
that's the only major question that I have.
but also the way I see it is, at least if they can get them to spend the TPE, they've got a clear line. And if someone with such top speed, manages to score 8 goals in 15 games, what's it gonna do when they have even more speed?
Oh, God knows there.
We've got the basis there of a very a potentially, like, I don't want to say legendary player, but a player that could be going for the Golden Boot for seasons to come if they can add to the places that are absolutely needed. It's a very interesting build because 17 on any attribute this early on is a huge TP investment, but I guess in this case it paid off in terms of performance on the field. It's just a matter of, now that they're going to move on into the minors, where something like this might be, the players are much faster, there's more actives and whatnot. This is where a player like this needs to be able to shore up their weaknesses a bit more to be able to perform at the same level.
It will certainly be very interesting to see if they can do that. Certainly, if they can, I think the sky would be the limit here.
And the next pick we have at pick number 35, Tokyo coming back, trying to catch up with Hollywood's all of their picks. And Tokyo selects Nifemi Anjorin.
Nifumi and Durin. Oh, wait, I wonder if we've seen this player around or if they're new create.
They are a new create. They are.
Ah, fair enough.
A great player for a left midfield with 4 goals, expected 122, 7 assists, expected 433. So they've certainly taken the most of their opportunities. With a 735, they've only missed 1 game, so they must have created just a tad bit too late to get the full 15 games. So right after the season had started. I do want to point out that they are one of the biggest distance runners in the league. They with 196.4 kilometers ran, which is good for 10th in the league. And honestly, a 735 rating, they're just outside the top 10 with something like that. So they're a player that I don't know if they're still active or not, but for their build and what they've invested in everything, they've really made the most of their opportunities.
And I really want to highlight that 13 work rate. Work rate is such an underrated skill here in the SSL and in Football Manager in general, if I may break the fourth wall briefly. But it is it I I would say that work rate probably contributes to that high distance run. Being able to use that natural every player gets natural fitness and stamina set to 20 by default, so being able to use that energy effectively getting up and down the field is a very good sign of their ability to make their presence known in midfield. Uh their their traits are knocks ball past opponent and plays short simple passes. So certainly going to be getting n- n- dribbling the ball or focusing on dribbling the ball past tacklers in midfield before then coming close to try and set up the more attacking midfield players with balls to turn into goal scoring chances. So certainly will be a very again one of the more unsung players in midfield, but absolutely a valued member of that midfield if they can continue to develop in this way. A lot of attributes here are at 10 or 11, which again doesn't look impressive on this screen, but certainly is a good base to build from in the future according to the team's needs. So absolutely not knocking it. Personally, I think this is a player that could develop into something fairly great as long as they can direct that development in the way that they need to.
Another thing that makes this academy performance so impressive is that they actually played as a left defender for Atletico during the season.
That's wild. Is left defenseman their secondary position?
I believe
Yes,
so.
they have
Yes.
they have secondary positions of right midfielder and left defense.
So yeah, that is wild.
Coming up next, we have pick number 38 with Sao Paulo, also trying to catch up to Hollywood's currently 9 picks or 8 picks. I don't know where we're at. I lost count.
I think
But
it would
Sao
be
Paulo has selected K. Roy Bandinho at pick number 38.
I will remember Roy Bendinho as the player that crushed Stockholm's hopes in the final game of the season with, I believe, a brace, so 2 goals. So 2 of their 4 goals came on the very last game of the season. Yeah, overall, like a very fast player who's able to score goals from playing as was it left wing back? Um, yeah, I don't
I
have
think
much to say this far into the draft, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're getting to the end of our brain cells right now. I feel like.
very much.
So certainly this is a very interesting build thus far. We see the 15 pace there, which is a solid number, but after that, the two stats we point out are both tens. And I will say, looking at their attributes, most of a very high number of their stats have gotten to 10. So this is I've been talking about well-balanced builds. This is probably the most balanced build I have seen in this draft in terms of getting everything to at least a minimum floor of 10, of double digits. So, absolutely a platform to build this player into basically whatever is needed, I would say. If they need to be more effective further forward, well, they have positional experience in attacking midfield or left, and they can add TPE to that. If they need to drop further back, they have positional experience in left defense, and they can build TPE to that. It's a very certainly a very versatile player, a bit of a blank canvas to build whatever the user and the GM need from them. Their traits are runs with ball often and cuts inside from both wings, so will absolutely be a force on the left wing regardless of what direction they take this player. Absolutely. So certainly going to be interesting to see how this player grows, what they end up specializing in, and time will tell whether this very you know wide wide character building strategy works out. I think it's a very interesting way to go about things. So best of luck to them.
And the next pick we have is at pick number 42, Hollywood yet again. It's only Hollywood and Sao Paulo left making their picks. Hollywood selecting their 10th player, if I'm counting this correctly. And they have selected Dion Meredith.
Yeah, the thing that jumps out to me right off the bat with Dion Meredith is that in spite of 6 appearances, they've scored 5 goals on base TPE, which is absolutely ridiculous in this league.
Jeez.
And that does put them like in a bit of a tie with a whole bunch of other active players at 5 goals.
That's a goal contribution a game.
Pretty much. Took one game to look around and then started scoring. Yeah, I'm not sure how active they are, but that is a very impressive on a team that had, a lot of goals coming from, Bergkamp, Martel, and others on Medellin.
If I remember correctly, Meredith didn't even need the first game. I think there was a goal and an assist the first game. Again,
Oh, jeez.
Very
or maybe
impressive.
I'm misremembering. It was maybe Bailey the third, or maybe the two of them synced up very well in their first game together. Yeah, impressive performances in very few games.
And certainly reflected in that average rating there, 7.83, even in a small sample size of 6 matches. That is still a very solid figure. And frankly, if they can produce to that level for Hollywood Capstad, then look out, basically. As far as traits go, they cut inside from both wings and they knock the ball past their opponent. So stuff you'll love to see your winger have, beat being able to beat people wide, with that 13 dribbling, certain and 12 off the ball as well. Certainly, uh, should be able to very effectively contribute from the wing. And I also really like their 14 acceleration. I would like the pace to be a little bit higher. It's only at a 12, but there's certainly room for development there. Only 350 TPE. There's still a lot of TPE on the table. Certainly plenty of time for them to grow beyond even this. So yeah, this is another fairly decent pick, especially this late by Hollywood Capstad.
And next we go back to Sao Paulo, back to Brazil, with pick number 46, and they select Crazy Tomato the second.
Hmm. Crazy Tomatoes. Second, that tells me we had the first one.
Yes, Crazy Tomato the first was a goalkeeper, I believe, from season 7.
Hmm. Not too far behind. Not too far ago. Well,
But a very efficient player, 5 goals, 7 assists there on, again, 350 TP as a striker. Probably did not play as striker, considering the front was on Sik was Klose and Selik, so they probably played somewhere around them. But still, to pop 5 goals, 7 assists, and basically be tied for third on a team with probably the highest offense in the league. Very impressive on that front.
Absolutely. And yeah, I take back what I said earlier about that 15 pace and 10s and everything else being the most balanced build. This might be it actually. The highest we have is acceleration at 12, and everything else basically the majority of everything else is at a 10. The only exceptions being marking, passing, penalty taking, and tackling at 5, along with teamwork, vision, flair, bravery, and concentration. So the majority of stats at a 9, or at a 10 rather, positioning at a 9. So certainly, certainly competent at a lot of things that you want a striker to be competent at. Uh, yes, absolutely. mm, and should be very interesting to watch. Places shots and tries tricks, which is an interesting combination. I do worry that with only 5 flair, the tries tricks might not be as effective. But again, plenty of TPE, plenty of time to shore that up. And places shots, always an important, helpful trait for strikers to have. Should be interesting to see how this player grows again. Will be very fascinating to see what they become in a couple of seasons, assuming they are active.
And
Assume
we are
so.
down to the final selection of the draft. We have our final pick. Hollywood, once again, making pick number 50
The
and their
star of a show.
11th pick. They've picked a minor league team, essentially, this draft. And they select Hansel So Hot right now.
That he is.
That's too hot.
But final pick of the draft from Stockholm, a central defensive midfielder who probably had a field day with what was happening up front. 1 goal, 3 assists, average rating of 687. Not a bad season. I would say it's above average, but it's not a bad season overall. Definitely has an interesting build from what I can see, and I'll let Metafiction talk about it.
Well, certainly. So we obviously see there we have balance, pace, and dribbling at 12, which is not a bad start. You've also got passing at 12, as with technique and first touch, which is very important. Those technical skills, a good start. I but apart from those, their technical skills are all 5s, which might not be as big a deal for a position like central defensive midfielder compared to, say, a winger or an attacking midfielder, but it would be nice for those to be a little higher, certainly. But they do make up for it by having higher mental stats. Again, a lot of 12s there, anticipation, composure, etc. Their traits are dictates tempo, which is a pretty solid one for central defensive midfield, and also crossing early, which I have to say, is a little odd for a player that is supposed to, at least in theory, supposed to be playing more of a central role. Doesn't really get out onto those wings that often. But I suppose there are situations where it could be useful. Uh, but that said, I do think this is I do think this is another pick that, as long as they can invest in some of these positions that are lacking, I would like to see that marking a little higher. That tackling would be, it needs to be higher than 5, but otherwise, I think a solid start here. And as long as the guidance is there, as long as they can earn that TPE, then this could easily turn into a very strong pick.
Again, a lot of the later picks is going to be. I guess we can go to the whole recap now. Um, a lot of these later picks are going to be dependent on whether or not these players are able to either be brought back to activity or able to spend past whatever TP they stopped at. But yeah, here we go. I think round 4 is missing a few picks entered.
Yes.
But overall, thank you for joining us on the draft. Just a quick recap, I guess, if anyone wants to do one.
I can sort of run down the picks real quick.
Okay, go for it.
So going back to that first round, we had Leo Fiacra going first overall to Buenos Aires. Uh, we then had Hollywood taking the first of their many picks on Nikola Lovric, followed by Tokyo picking Hannah von Gerritsen at right wing back. Hollywood again came in with Pete Martell, which was the TPE leader of this class, followed closely behind by Schwarzwalder FV picking Clara Schmidt there at left wing. Then it was a twofer for União Sao Paulo with Alexander Salic and Steven Urkel, which I still believe might be the move of the draft. Being able to draft those two strong players back to back will certainly be very important. And then Reykjavik United rounded out the first round with Marco Tentacles. I said it right this time. You can lay off me now. Marco Tentacles, the left defender, uh, rounding out the first round there. Then the second round was more of the same, more strong players that again would have been first rounders coming off the board late because of the depth of this class. We had the goalkeeper Misad Kabiri to Buenos Aires, followed by another twofer for Hollywood, Gerard Closa and Joao Cabral. Certainly an interesting combination there. Emmanuel Blackman then went to AC Romana Inter London. Sao Paulo again picking back to back, this time Martin Schlesi, I hope I said that right, and Squidward Tortellini, uh, taking them back to back at 13 and 14. Then came Daedalus Hawkins to Catalonia Soul, and Hollywood made another pick, this one being Jalen Brooks at left wing. Then came the third round, was Buenos Aires taking David Pulzer. Again, I can only apologize. Followed by Hollywood FC taking Cameron Bailey III with that 17 flair. Still going to be very interesting to see how that translates to an SSL field. Schwarzwalder now was the next one to have a doubleheader with DeMarcus Brothers and I'm Just Ken. This was followed by Kant Conway, or Y, uh, going to AC Romana and Inter London. This was followed up by Ali Tamime going to Hollywood, and then our first pass where before Hollywood picked again, this being Jonas Kanwald. And unfortunately, I have a very poor short-term memory, so I do not remember the picks for round 4 and then on. So I can only apologize for that as well. But certainly a very interesting draft with a lot of talent going even into the third round, which normally most drafts peter out about halfway through the second, if that. So this is going to be one of I still maintain this is going to be a generation that we look back on in a couple of seasons time and remark on just how much talent was here, how many of these players will go on hopefully to contribute. So no, if you're in this class, no pressure. But honestly, this is again, it's been a very fascinating ride watching these players develop, and the story only now just begins as they now join their SSL organizations and get set for their rookie season.
And I think with that, we are going to end our draft show here tonight. You will, or if you are in the draft class, you will be contacted by your managers soon. Or if you've already done so, you can join their locker rooms. They will send you some invites. And remember to claim the training camp. I sent a message in your class channel to with a link to the training camp for season 13. It's 40 TP and it closes tonight, or it closes at midnight Pacific summertime, because you are 1 hour earlier than what Europe is right now, where I am. So Pacific summertime, midnight is when that closes and the new training camp opens up for next season. So remember to claim that. It's a lot of TP. Would it be a shame to let that go to waste? Thank you, Metafiction, Zune, and Project Saint for talking about the players, allowing me to just do the back end stuff. That has been a good change of pace.
Yeah, no
from
worries, man.
previous
As you know,
previous season.
give all the props to Fiction and Zune. Those two carried.
Well, really, I think the praise should go to Canada's for being able to run all this back end stuff while we jabber on. It's certainly not an easy job. So
Mm-hmm.
Messed up a couple times, but yeah.
It's been a fun day. Yeah, I think we'll just wrap it up here. On behalf of everyone here at the SSL office, wish you all a good day and have a good one.
Yep, and happy Mother's Day as well.
take care, everyone.